Everyone, thank you for watching and coming back to my channel. And if you are new, welcome. And I wanted to do the next video in my Cinderella Chronicles series. I have talked about the three Rodgers and Hammerstein adaptations and just wanted to do some catch up with a couple of the film adaptations that I have watched and books that I have read. And I am hoping just to continue on with this project. Because after I said that I was done with it, I was like, no, actually, I'm not done with it. So a couple European films that I watched. The first is a 1973 film from Czechoslovakia, and it is Three Wishes for Cinderella. This was a really fun, whimsical retelling, and I hear from what I saw in the comment section and from a couple people who sent me messages on Instagram, this is very well loved in Europe, and I think especially in Germany, I think they show it every Christmas morning, or maybe Christmas evening, but it airs on Christmas, and I just think that's really special to have these films that aren't necessarily holiday films, but you have that association, so they become really nostalgic at that time of the year. I think a lot of people watch The Sound of Music around Christmas time. And I really enjoyed this one. It is short. It is only an hour and 24 minutes. I really love the soundtrack. It had a very playful feel to it. Unfortunately, I did not really enjoy the romance in this one because I could not stand the prince. He was so childish, and he and Cinderella kind of have this really rough start, their introduction to one another. And there's this like chase scene in the woods where he goes after her. And obviously I know sometimes relationships get off to a rocky beginning, but then I like to see some progression in the characters, and he just didn't change at all. I still felt like he was such a jerk, and I felt like he would be such a not nice husband. Like, I feel like he would be the husband that would never be willing to admit that he was wrong and wouldn't fight fair. These are just all of these, I'm like reeling, doing predictions of what their relationship will be like in the future. I think that's not really the point of the movie. The point is like the fairy tale, but I can't help but think about how would their marriage be in years to come. But I really liked that it kept a lot of the traditional elements that are in the Brothers Grimm fairy tale that are not in a lot of film retellings, which includes Cinderella's her friendship with the birds that live nearby. And so at one point her stepmother is really mad, and she pours a bunch of lentils in ash and says, well, you can get what you want, but you have to separate all the lentils out of the ash by midnight. And so Cinderella gets the birds to help her. And then also this having three wishes. In, I think, the original Grimm's fairy tale, it's where she goes to a tree that has been planted in the yard that her mother's been buried by. But there are three hazelnuts that she gets someone to give her. A servant in the household, he finds them on his drive and he brings them back to Cinderella. And so for each wish, one hazelnut for each wish, including when she asked for a dress for the ball, a dress just like pops out of the hazelnut shell. So I really liked that. It had some really fun fairy tale elements. She only had one stepsister in this one, and I think you don't get quite as much of the stepsister as you do in other retellings. But I can go either way with the stepsisters. I like seeing the variety in the retellings. But there was nothing from the traditional retelling. There was nothing like the cutting off the heel or the toes of the foot to try to fit into the slipper. It doesn't end that way. It's like there's this chase scene to get back to the house. There's a couple chase scenes in this. So yes, it was fun, and I really enjoyed watching it, but The Prince was definitely not my favorite. But I am finding with older films, I'm really picky with the princes, and I don't often love them. The next film that I watched was a rather mediocre one, and this is from 1991. It's called If the Shoe Fits, and I asked my friend Becky from Talking Amongst Our Shelves, the monthly live show that we are both a part of, if she would watch it with me, and we texted while watching, and at the end, I just said, well, that was a rather mediocre retelling, and she had to agree. It is set in Paris, and Rob Lowe is a fashion designer, photographer, and Jennifer Grey lives with her really obnoxious stepsisters, and it's the world of Paris fashion, and she is this kind of nobody intern on the set that Rob Lowe doesn't ever notice. And then the night of this big fashion show happens, and Cinderella's fairy godmother shows up and gives her, or she designs these shoes. And when she puts the shoes on, this magical thing happens where boom, she's like turned into this glam girl, which I don't think I've seen that in any other Cinderella retelling. So I did like that aspect of the shoes being so magical that she's just transformed whenever she wears them. And so then the Rob Lowe character notices her when she's all glammed up, and then she has to do this juggling act going back between the, you know, kind of glasses wearing plain Jane type character that she is in the beginning, and then to the glamorous model. So it was just I really was not impressed by Rob Lowe in this film. I like Jennifer Grey, so I liked her, but just there wasn't much about it that was inspiring. It was, you know, amusing to watch, but definitely not one of the more impressive retellings that I've seen. Then another European one that I watched, and this is from 1989, and this is from West Germany, and it is Aschenputtel, which is the German term for Cinderella. And this was another one where I was not really a fan of the prince. None of the characters in this like really stood out to me, and one element in retellings that makes it really stressful for me is if the father is there living with the family, with the stepmother, stepsisters, and Cinderella, while all the cruelty is happening to Cinderella, and he just doesn't pick up on it. This was in Zalushka, the Soviet Cinderella film, and I really struggle with that element. If he's there and he's being totally oblivious to the mistreatment, and so this happens in Ashenpootle, and I really struggled with that. But it was really fun to watch. I always enjoy seeing kind of the different interpretations. And the prince in this, though, it was like, I kind of think he looked like high fae, like, you know, not like cutesy like Tinkerbell fairy, but when you see fairies and like when you read high fantasy, like fae, kind of the fairies that have a lot of power. He looked like that to me, and you just don't get to know him at all. That is, I think, one of the pitfalls of Cinderella, is that you don't get to know the prince that well. And this was one where I felt like you really didn't get to know him. So I definitely enjoyed it. It was fun to watch, and it's neat to see, you know, the different ways that it's adapted. So then by far my favorite, and I did talk about this in a what I've been watching, but I just want to have it documented on a Cinderella Chronicles video, is this, I think it's a 2011 adaptation, and it's just called Cinderella. It's put out by UU Media, and it's hard to even find on IMDb, but it is on Amazon Prime, so I will link the Amazon Prime link. So if you have Prime, you can watch it for free. And it was just really special. So it's set in Rome in the 1950s. And what I really loved about this is it starts out before any of the action has happened, and Cinderella accidentally, she's looking over the wall for the wall dividing her house and you know, her prince's house. And she accidentally falls over the wall. And then she gets lost. She doesn't know how to go home. And they meet on this first day, and they have a really meaningful conversation about literature and beloved books. And I just like that there's this instant connection that they have. And then years pass, and Cinderella's father has passed away, and the beautiful house she's been living in, the stepmother, has turned it into a bed and breakfast. So I really loved that aspect of it also. And there was just a lot of creative choices that they made with this that I really loved. The whole unfolding of who the fairy godmother is was really marvelous, and I can't believe it's not done in more of them. I just really appreciated it in this one. There is no magic in this one, so I think it's neat to see like very things that feel like it could be an everyday plot, you know, with some wonderful things happening to someone, but no magic things happening. And another aspect that I really enjoyed is she loves to play the piano in this, and has a deep, deep love for music that she was given by her father and her mother. And so this is around 3 hours, so there's a lot of time to have really wonderful storytelling in there. And yeah, I'm sad this one I think is not accessible on DVD, and I'm just so sad if they will take it off Amazon Prime, because it's now a favorite. I really enjoyed it. The one thing is there are some things towards the end, some of the choices that the prince makes that I was really unhappy with and I just thought were really indecent, but they're such spoilers, so I can't say them. So I would like to talk to someone, you know, after they watch it, if they're interested in watching it. So yes, that was one that I really enjoyed. Okay, then on to some novelizations, and one ended up on my favorites of 2019 video, but I just wanted again to have it documented here for all of you, and it is Cinders, the Untold Story of Cinderella by Finley Aaron. I love this one. I guess it's a trope of you know, someone dressing in disguise as the opposite gender, and so Ella dresses up and she enters jousting tournaments, and so it's the prince is one of the competitors in the jousting tournaments that she ends up working with and is hired by, and so they get to know each other that way. I love having this, you know, setting aside maybe the romantic attraction you would have for someone and getting to know them on a deep emotional level, and then the romantic attraction follows, and I really love that about it. And it just has a lot more to it than just the ball. And so I think some people kind of can think of Cinderella as a more blasé retelling, but I think there's a lot that you can do with it, and that's why I love it so much. I think the ball that's the final thing, you know, that's the ending, but there's so much before that. And the way they had the fairy godmother in this, I really loved. There's a lot of magic in this one. It was just a really enjoyable retelling. There's a couple things with the, like, it has kind of silly exclamations where they'll use nonsense words. Like instead of, oh my goodness, you know, they'll say kind of nonsense words, which were kind of silly. But once I pushed through like that, I really, really enjoyed it. So I definitely recommend it. And then we have The Stepsister Scheme by Jim Hines. This was my most recent read. So I think I read this around 3 weeks ago and I could not put it down. I loved the originality of this and it was just so creative. And so what you have in this one is Cinderella and the prince have gotten married and they're in love. They're really happy. And then one of there are two stepsisters in this one, but one of the stepsisters comes back and basically tries to assassinate Cinderella. And then before she leaves, she makes it clear that she has kidnapped the prince. And I thought, I can't believe that has never occurred to me before as a possibility for a plot where if the stepsisters are crazy enough to treat Cinderella as cruelly as they do, to cut off their toes or heels to try to fit in glass slippers, and the stepmother to allow all of this to go on and create a lot of cruel treatment, to be involved in a lot of cruel treatment of Cinderella, then surely they're crazy enough to try to take revenge afterwards. And what's really fun about this is there's so much female friendship in it, where Cinderella and Snow White and Sleeping Beauty go on a quest to rescue the prince. And so it's kind of the flip side of the damsel in distress. It's turned on its head, and Cinderella goes to rescue the prince. And it just had so many creative, fantastic elements to it. Like I said, the female friendship for me was like a huge part of me loving this. And I also really enjoyed that Cinderella's father was a glass worker, and so he was able to make the glass slippers for her. There was music and there was magic in this retelling though, but in that instance with the slippers, he had crafted them himself. So he's like a glass craftsman, and I just really enjoyed a lot about this. So I definitely recommend it. And then lastly, one that was a low note, so I shouldn't have ended on this, but I didn't think about the order, is Just Ella by Margaret Peterson Haddix. So this is another sequel to Cinderella. And in this one, Cinderella is very disillusioned with her marriage to the prince. And I can't tell you what it was that I didn't love about this. There was just not much that grabbed me. I think the character of Ella, I just didn't feel that invested in, that interested in. It's not the fact that she didn't like the prince. I wouldn't like hold that against her, because that is something in fairy tales. Like, how well do you really know each other before you get married? But just, there wasn't much about her that appealed to me. So I just didn't enjoy this one that much. I gave it 2 stars, but I wanted to read it, wanted to say I had read it. And yes, I think that is all I'm going to say about these. I hope you enjoyed this. I really do love the fairy tale of Cinderella. So even if these videos don't get watched as much, I have so much fun doing the project. So I will be back for another video soon. Have a lovely day.